Minority Report is a 1956 science fiction mystery novella by Philip K. Dick that was turned into a 2002 film directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Tom Cruise. It was also turned into a 2002 video game called Minority Report Everybody Runs, a 2015 TV show called Minority Report that aired on Fox and ran for one season.
The government wanted to hide us from the world. But I don't want to hide forever.
And a 2024 stage production in London where they gender swapped the lead role, so instead of the main character being John Anderton, it was Dame Julia Anderton. Today, I'm only talking about the 2002 Tom Cruise film. I checked out footage from all the other adaptations I just mentioned, and they all look okay. I think the Tom Cruise movie is the most noteworthy adaptation of the story. It was a pretty big film back when it came out, and it's probably the one that most people are familiar with. The original Philip K. Dick story was first published in the sci-fi magazine called Fantastic Universe. It's only about 50 to 60 pages and was an enjoyable read, and I recommend it if you like those kind of classic 50s sci-fi stories. I don't have a standalone copy of Minority Report, but the version I read came from this anthology book of short stories that were adapted into feature films that I got. Got some good other stories that can come from this, some good sci-fi, horror stuff, some good dramas in here, so you'll be seeing more of this book in the future. I also found the complete original story online as a PDF if you want to check it out and read it for yourself. Link is in the description. The original story was highly influential in both the world of science fiction and criminal justice. Not only has it been adapted multiple times into different mediums, but Philip K. Dick is also credited for coming up with the term pre-crime, which is a form of predictive policing where law enforcement tries to identify crimes before they actually occur. There's also a Wikipedia page just on the themes and technologies in this movie, and even a page on the custom Lexus model car that Tom Cruise drove in this film. That's pretty cool. Overall, I think Steven Spielberg's Minority Report is a good movie. Not a great movie, but it's fun to see at least once. It has some really cool sci-fi action scenes, and it also has some surprisingly accurate predictions about science and technology and society that a lot of these have come pretty true in 2025. So, enough of me blabbing. Let's get into this. First off, the biggest difference of all is that the book is called The Minority Report, and the movie is simply called Minority Report. This is very important and obviously requires a 7-hour YouTube deep dive video essay on why they possibly have dropped the. Okay, let's begin for real now. The setting is always a good place to start, so the book does not specify what year the story takes place, but all the action location-wise takes place in and around the New York City area. The movie, however, specifically says it takes place in 2054, and all the plot takes place in and around the Washington, D.C. area and surrounding states like Maryland and Virginia. Next, let's talk about the characters. Why not start with the main guy himself? In the book, his name was John Allison Anderton. In the movie, his name was just John Anderton. They don't give him a middle name. In the book, John Anderton is the founder and creator of the whole pre-crime program that the story revolves around. In the movie, John Anderton is an important guy at pre-crime. He is currently the guy in charge of operations. However, he is just an employee. He's not the actual founder of the program. In the book, John Anderton was in his 50s. He was getting older. He was going a little bald. He was kind of past his prime character who was slowly seeing the world change around him. However, in the movie, this is Hollywood and we got to sell some tickets, so they make him the much younger, better looking, more athletic Tom Cruise. In the book, Anderton is married to his wife named Lisa, and she has a bigger role in the book than she does in the movie. And together in the book, they had no children. However, in the movie, Anderton was married to Laura, but they got divorced due to complications from the fact that their kid was kidnapped and never seen again and is presumed dead.
Had pre-crime been in place just 6 months earlier, the loss you and Lara suffered would have been prevented.
The movie also adds a feature to Anderton's character that he was secretly addicted to a drug called neuroin. It's like heroin for your mind. Neuroin, heroin, get it? Clever, okay. In the end of the book, John Anderton avoids prison time by instead taking a deal where him and his wife will be exiled to one of the faraway colony planets. Meanwhile, movie Anderton gets a much more typical Hollywood-style ending where everyone is happy, him and his ex-wife reunite, and they're expecting their second child. The next major character is Witwer. 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 In the book, he's Ed Witwer, and in the movie, he's Danny Witwer. Why did they change this? No idea. In both the book and movie versions, Witwer is the younger, cockier, second-in-command guy that's brought into pre-crime who John Anderton sees as a threat to his job.
If it's a question of authority.
No, there is no question. You don't have any.
I have a warrant in my pocket that says different.
In the book, Witwer's physical appearance is described as having a close crop haircut of blonde hair with bright blue eyes, which doesn't really look like Colin Farrell. After reading the book, I thought Neil McDonough's character was supposed to be Witwer when he first showed up based on his physical appearance. Both the book and the movie start off with Witwer clearly seeming to be the villain of the story. However, as the plot unfolds, turns out there are deeper forces at work, and Witwer really just is a cocky young guy looking to take Anderton's job eventually. Nothing more insidious than that. This leads me to the biggest change for Witwer's character, which is that in the book, eventually, Anderton and Witwer realize that they are not enemies and, in a sense, join forces and work together towards stopping the military takeover of the real bad guy in the story. And in the end, Witwer survived. However, in the movie, Witwer never got the opportunity to join forces with Anderton because he's killed off as soon as he finds out about the deeper conspiracy. Next characters to talk about are probably the most noteworthy and original characters from Minority Report. They're the ones that everyone remembers. It's the Precogs, the ones who actually do the future predictions to help the police arrest people before they actually commit crimes.
Just 6 years ago, the homicide rate in this country had reached epidemic proportions. It seemed that only a miracle could stop the bloodshed. But instead of one miracle, we were given 3, the precognitives.
The book Precogs and the movie Precogs are very different. Okay, I mean, they both, there's 3 of them and they stay in a room and they predict the future and help the police. Yeah, that's all the same. But like everything else is different. Let me start with the similarities because there's fewer of them. In both versions, the Precogs are a group of 3 gifted individuals who predict the future. Their future predictions form the basis for the entire pre-crime police division. Without them, pre-crime would not exist.
Within a year, pre-crime effectively stopped murder in our nation's capital.
In both versions, the Precogs spend their lives in this closed-off, secure sanctuary room within the police headquarters building. Both versions have the Precogs' future predictions represented as printed information on little objects produced by this big machine that they're all hooked up to.
When the Precogs declare a victim and a killer, their name is embedded in the grain of wood. Since each piece is unique, the shape and grain is unique. The shape and grain is impossible to forge.
That's about where the similarities end. So, let's have some fun talking about their differences. Character names are one of the most frequently changed things from a book to a movie version of the same story. In the book, the Precogs' names were Mike, Donna, and Jerry. However, in the movie,
we call the female Agatha. The twins are Arthur and Dashiell.
Their movie names are references to the famous murder mystery detective authors Agatha Christie, Dashiell Hammett, and Arthur Conan Doyle. This may sound silly, but my nitpick here is, what did changing their names in the movie add to anything other than to have your know-it-all friend in the movie theater nudge you and be like, oh, they're named after 3 authors. Did you get that? In the movie, the 3 Precogs are normal-looking adults, and it's implied that they're highly intelligent. Now, let's see how the book describes the Precogs. Keep in mind, these are not my words. I'm just reading from the text. Times have changed. Check it out. In the gloomy half-darkness, the 3 idiots sat babbling. I think this is my favorite sentence from the whole story, by the way. Their minds were dull, confused, lost in shadows, but not the shadows of today. The 3 gibbering, fumbling creatures with their enlarged heads and wasted bodies were contemplating the future. It's not pleasant, Witwer murmured. I didn't realize they were so... He groped in his mind for the right word, gesticulating. So deformed. Deformed and retarded, Anderton instantly agreed, especially the girl here. Donna is 45 years old, but she looks about 10. In the movie, the 3 Precogs sit in the sterile, secluded room and sit in this bathtub thing together where they make their future predictions. Now, let's see how the book describes their general setup in this room. All day long, the idiots babbled, imprisoned in their special high-backed chairs, held in one rigid position by metal bars and bundles of wiring and clamps. Their physical needs were taken care of automatically. They had no spiritual needs. Vegetable-like, they muttered and dozed and existed. After reading that aloud, I actually picture something closer to people hooked up to the machines in the Matrix movies than I do the visuals we get in the Minority Report movie. In the movie, the Precogs' predictions are printed as information on these little balls that are produced by this big machine that they're all hooked up to. In the book, however, their predictions are not printed on tiny little balls, but instead punch cards. Every incoherent utterance, every random syllable was analyzed, compared, reassembled in the form of visual symbols, transcribed on conventional punch cards, and ejected into various coded slots. It's funny to me that the book describes them as conventional punch cards. It just shows how times have changed, because I don't think nowadays anyone my age or younger has actually used punch cards. Back in the 50s, when the story was written, punch cards were these stiff little paper cards with holes punched in them that functioned as physical means of storing digital data. That was how you stored your information back in the early days of computing. If anyone knows more about punch cards than me and wants to chime in the comments, feel free. In the movie, their future predicting abilities were due to the fact that their mothers were addicted to neuroin while they were pregnant. The drugs altered the baby's minds and gave them the ability to see the future. It's sci-fi, you know, it usually doesn't work out like that in real life. In the book, however, there's not much more of an explanation given as to why they had these abilities other than that they were born this way. In the movie, the Precogs are only able to predict murders.
Then why can't they see rapes, or assaults, or suicides?
Because of the nature of murder. There's nothing more destructive to the metaphysical fabric that binds us than the untimely murder of one human being by another.
Somehow I don't think that was Walt Whitman.
However, in the book, they can predict all sorts of crime, including thefts, income tax evasion, assault, extortion. You get the idea. In the movie, the Precogs are more or less deified by everyone that works with them.
In a way, they give us hope. Hope of the existence of the divine. I find it interesting that some people have begun to deify the Precogs.
They're heavily protected and given the white glove treatment at all times.
Cops aren't allowed inside the temple.
You've never been inside?
We keep strict separation so that no one can be accused of tampering.
However, in the book, everyone regards them as these extremely useful but subhuman morons. This is evident in the different terms that both the book and the movie use to describe the room where the Precogs live. In the movie, it's called the Temple.
Precogs are pattern recognition filters, that's all.
Yet you call this room the Temple.
Just a nickname.
However, in the book, they call it the Monkey Bay. Next, let's talk about the real secret villain of the plot. So the movie's storyline stays true to the original book for the first 10, maybe 20 minutes max, and then everything after that diverges from the original storyline. The biggest reason for this plot change is due to the identity of the real villain and who he is and what his end goals and motivation are. I say real villain in quotes because both the book and movie versions of the story, like I mentioned, start off with Anderton thinking Witwer is his real enemy. However, in both versions, as the story unfolds, it turns out that Witwer is not the guy behind the whole conspiracy, and instead there's this other, less obvious guy who is really the one with the evil scheme driving the plot. The book and movie plot lines are different enough that I can't just do an A-B comparison for them, so let's talk about them separately, starting with the book. The book's secret villain is the man the Precogs predicted Anderton would murder, an important military leader named Leopold Kaplan. Kaplan used to have more power, but the pre-crime program's success resulted in reduced need for him and the militaristic arm of society in the book's story world in general.
Within just 1 month under the pre-crime program, the murder rate in the District of Columbia was reduced 90%.
Kaplan was not happy about this, so long story short, the book's plot was an elaborate scheme for Kaplan and his military faction to end the pre-crime program and regain their lost control in society. The movie's secret villain is Lamar Burgess, the man who founded and is overall in charge of pre-crime. His motivation and end goal were essentially the opposite of Leo Kaplan's in the book, because in the book, he wanted to end the pre-crime program. However, in the movie, Lamar Burgess wanted to keep the pre-crime program running. He wanted to keep it running so it could be expanded on a nationwide scale because in the movie, at the time, it was only being used in and around the Washington, D.C. area, not in every city in the country.
On Tuesday, April 22nd, vote yes on the National Pre-Crime Initiative.
Although I guess the similarity is in both book and movie versions, the end result of the secret villain was to achieve more power for himself. So that's the same.
With pre-crime going national, maybe we can all look forward to a time when none of us will have to discharge another firearm ever again.
The movie's plot revolved around the fact that Anne Lively, the mother of the most powerful precog named Agatha, gave up custody because she was a neuroin addict.
Tell me about the intended victim, Miss Anne Lively.
Looks like she's a neuroin addict, but I show an address history that includes the Beaton Clinic.
So she cleaned up.
But later got clean and tried to get her daughter back from the pre-crime program. Lamar Burgess hired a man to kill Anne Lively, knowing the pre-crime system would prevent that murder.
All you'd have to do is hire someone to kill Anne Lively. Pre-crime stops the murder from taking place.
Once his hitman was stopped, Burgess killed Anne Lively himself in the same way that the hitman would have.
Someone else, having reviewed the prevision and dressed in the same clothes, commits the murder in exactly the same way.
Because he knew the pre-crime technicians would have seen this as an echo or duplicate prediction.
Technician takes a look, thinks he's looking at an echo, erases it.
And the record would therefore be deleted. Confused? I am. To me, one of the best things this movie did was show some really cool, futuristic, imaginative technologies that were way ahead of their time. A big part of the plot was that Tom Cruise needed new eyeballs to stay hidden because biometric scanners were everywhere in this world. We have those kind of scanners on lots of places nowadays, like fingerprints to open your laptops or facial recognition to open apps on our phone. And keep in mind, this movie was made way back in 2002. Another prediction is this virtual reality pleasure facility where people can live out their fantasies in the VR rooms.
It's a big rush, but you come out the other side without a heart attack.
I want to kill my boss.
This movie obviously wasn't the first to show this kind of thing, but the way it's portrayed seems realistic and comparable to how VR goggles and stuff like that works now. The movie's biggest prediction, and probably the coolest one for me, was how specific and custom-made the advertisements were for each individual.
The road you're on, John Anderton, is the one less traveled.
John Anderton! You can use a Guinness right about now.
Similar to today, product placement was everywhere in this world, but more interestingly, the biometric scans that would ID you when you walked into a building would tailor-make ads specifically for you with your name and everything. The movie doesn't go into details about how all this works, but it's eerily similar to nowadays how our data is sold to third parties and advertisers without us knowing. Overall impression. Like I mentioned earlier, I think this is a good movie. Not a great movie. But if you like sci-fi, action-adventure, it's definitely worth seeing at least once, if not just for the cool sci-fi ideas and action scenes. I've seen this multiple times, but every time I see it, the plot is still a little confusing to me. I mean, I get it. I just explained to you guys the plot, like I understand it, but it just, I don't know, it's kind of convoluted. The books was overall more straightforward. All the acting was fine in the movie. It's not like there were any terrible standout performances. However, I just didn't connect with any of the characters. The precog character, Agatha, spends most of her time being annoying or useless or shouting. Tom Cruise is a big, successful movie star. However, every time I see him in a movie, he's just Tom Cruise to me. I'm never lost in the immersion of the film. He's just always kind of being the same guy, and I say, oh, look, there goes Tom Cruise again, not there goes John Anderton. And this could just be me because I know some people actually really like this aspect of the movie, but I think this movie, visually speaking, looks disgusting. It had this really washed out, overblown, desaturated, overexposed, intentional look to it. Apparently they did some special stuff to the film when they were processing it to get this specific look, and just why? So much of this movie was so blindingly bright that part of the reason I didn't care about the plot after a certain point was that I just didn't enjoy looking at the screen. After the hour-and-a-half mark, I'd find myself just looking at other things in the room, like my cat or my phone, just to give my eyes a break. As always, I like to finish off with some random fun thoughts I had while watching this movie. So, first off, the way this character says murder makes me laugh every time. I don't think it's supposed to be funny. Besides the big obvious stuff that I mentioned before, there's some cool little bits of futuristic technology that are just scattered throughout the scenery in this movie. One example I like are these animated cereal boxes. They don't call too much attention to them, but they're there to enrich the world. Imagine if we could watch Tony the Tiger or Count Chocula moving around. That'd be kind of cool. What the heck was this contortionist lady doing here? Random, but I mean, wow, she's flexible. In the movie's story universe, violent crime like murder is basically unheard of because of the precogs, so the police end up using a lot of non-lethal weapons for apprehending the pre-criminals. My favorite of these futuristic non-lethal weapons in this movie were the Sick Sticks. The Sick Sticks were these baton-like things that made you instantly sick and vomit when you get hit. It's kind of gross and disgusting, but I give them some points for originality because I haven't seen these anywhere else. The rotten food in this guy's fridge was funny, but like, why is it here? I mean, I know they're trying to show that Tom Cruise is blind now and he can't see what he's reaching for. Like, I get that. You didn't have to make him eat spoiled rotten food, although it is funny. I don't know if these visuals were supposed to be intentionally funny or not in the scene, but Tom Cruise looks like such a douchebag here. Look at him. What are you wearing? Probably my favorite little funny moment from this movie is this guy in the virtual reality pleasure facility where his fantasy is to just have a bunch of people complimenting him all day long, going, "You the man. No, you the man."
Thank you. I don't deserve that. I'm gonna try. No, you're the man. No, really, you're the man.
And I remember my friend and I were laughing our asses off when we saw that back in the day. One of my favorite little throwaway lines from this movie is from the precog Agatha.
I'm tired of the future.
I'm tired of the future. Aren't we all? Well, if you made to this point in the video, thank you very much. I appreciate it as always, and I will see you next time when I do another book versus movie comparison. If you got any suggestions, let me know in the comments. Hope you enjoyed this. See you later. Goodbye.